his experiences involved multicultural, multinational experiences. He's really able to bring the world together. The theme of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam that really drives, a lot of Indian philosophy. I think Abhay is a living testament of that. He's really able to show us that the world is really, like a small village, and we all, are related, interconnected. And Abhay's poems and his literary works are really a living, example of how, you can bring the world together through the power of words. So congratulations, Abhay. Today is a great evening. We have this wonderful new translation, first of its kind, which we are going to officially launch this evening, and we'll also have a wonderful discussion around it. Next, I would like to invite Suraj Kumar. He's a filmmaker, and he has really been a very important part of this entire event, because tonight we are not just celebrating Magahi poetry, we are celebrating Bihari literature, in many ways. And Suraj also hails from Nalanda, so they share a lot in common. So a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts, will come out. You will see, because we are also talking about the cinematic potentials of this book. We really feel, and that's why we have also made a short film which we will be showing. The film is actually made by Suraj. And Suraj is really a filmmaker who has really committed himself to showcasing some very important personalities. If you are not aware of his films, you should definitely check out his film Thinking of Him, which is about Tagore and Victoria Ocampo. There's a wonderful film on Sri Aurobindo that he has made about his spiritual awakening before Sri Aurobindo became Sri Aurobindo. So a lot of interesting work he has also done for television. He has produced over 1,500 episodes of serials for Doordarshan over the last 20 years or so. And of course, we'll talk about the cinematic potentials of Bahadur, and we'll discuss, different dimensions of what got you hooked to this book. Next, I would like to invite Millie Aishwarya. She's the publisher of adult publishing unit at Penguin Random House India. During her career, she has published a range of best-selling books across genres. An award-winning publisher, her focus has been on championing diverse voices, discovering talented debut writers, and building an inclusive program at Penguin Random House India. Welcome, Millie. We'll try to explore different dimensions of what you do, and of course, your thoughts on what makes this a work of modern classic literature, in its essence. So we'll talk about that. Next, I have the great honor of inviting Vandana ji, born in Indore, Madhya Pradesh. Please join us, Vandana. That's ma'am. Born in Indore, Madhya Pradesh, Vandana ji is a bilingual author and translator. She has a master's degree in history from Delhi University. She has published 4 short story collections, translated several stories, poems, and essays, and published her first novel, Bisad Par Jugnu, recently. Now she's working on her second novel, and we all are very excited about that for sure. And now that we have you, and on this panel, we would love to explore, your work and also your reflections on how do you look at the art of translation, which I feel is really a very important, dialogue. Since we talked about, the idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, I really feel translation is very important. A few years back, I had the pleasure of attending a session by Gayatri Spivak, and she really touched upon the importance of translation, how humanity really owes a lot to translation. And I think it's really an art form that needs to be celebrated more than we have ever done. And I think we are really on the right track for that. Lastly, I would like to invite the wonderful journalist, Aditi Chakravarti. She's an author, senior feature editor in Outlook, with over 2 decades of experience in media, lifestyle and education industries across various cities in India and abroad. She holds a degree from Ford School of Management and Nottingham Trent University. And lastly, I'm your moderator for the evening. My name is Murtaza Ali Khan. I'm a culture writer and a film critic. And I really am a huge admirer of Abhay's work. I've already highlighted that, in the very beginning, that some of his works have really, tugged me at the heartstrings. And I really am a huge fan and admirer of what he's doing. Often, it happens that we only champion people after they have actually moved away, say after 100 years of their being on earth. I think now we need to change their attitude. We need to change geniuses who are amongst us. We need to celebrate that. I really see Abhay's work, as an enormous contribution to the art of storytelling, to the art of poetry. Celestial for me is really a work that you all ought to check out. It's a recent work that he came out with, and how beautifully he has connected astronomy with poetry. I think very few equals are there in the whole of literature. And of course, now with this new rendition, that has come out, Fool Bahadur, he's really taken his commitment to bringing his own region on the world map to the next level. I think with these words, I welcome you again all. I welcome all the panelists on the dais, and I now request you to play this short film that Suraj Kumar has conceived. I think this will give you a little curtain raiser about what Fool Bahadur is all about.
Bahadur by Jayannath, translated into English from Magahi. Babu Samlal was a Mukhtar of some repute in Bihar Sharif, but he had earned his fame and fortune by stooping rather low in his professional and personal conduct. His father was a driver, and he stood out the exam to become a Mukhtar himself and managed to pass after 3 failed attempts. He was a clever man, and he was budget registered in his name, built it up a few stories, and got Sulalal to work as his cook in the house. Such was his character. Normally, all government servants demand attention and are susceptible to flattery. This tendency can be attributed to the foreign. Halder Singh, the circle officer, had already been working there for about a year. For quite some time, Samlal nurtured the ambition of becoming a Rai Bahadur. Although he was well aware that he did not merit the post, he had complete faith in his art of flattery. A day before the expected time of the arrival of the new SDO, he reached Kuel railway station and busied himself with making arrangements to welcome new SDO.
Very tantalizing, I'm really excited, and I really tell you, I can vouch for it. It's really a page turner. Once you pick up the novel, it's really unputdownable. You will not be able to, leave it, before finishing the reading. And it's really a fast read, and it's really a wonderful work of hardcore, Maghi literature. It's very true to its roots. And of course, this discussion, we'll try to explore that, and we'll also touch upon why, Abhay was so keen on bringing this book to life. So, Abhay, what do you suggest? Should we have the launch first, or should we get down to the panel discussion? What do you suggest? Yeah, I think that's the most auspicious thing to do right now. So before we officially start this panel discussion, so we're joined by some more guests. We have some space in the front here and there. You can come. Yeah, you can go. This one seat there. So we are about to start with this panel discussion, but before the panel discussion, we have already, gotten a little sneak peek into what Phool Bahadur is all about. But still, Abhay, I really want to miss out on this opportunity because we have you at the dais and we have you with a copy of Phool Bahadur. We would really like you to read, a few excerpts, just to get us further, excited and further getting enveloped into the world of Phool Bahadur. Thank you.
Before before going into Phool Bahadur, I would just like to give you a sense of what is Maghi and what is Maghi literature actually. So Maghi is actually a language which comes from Magadhi Prakrit, which was spoken by Buddha and Mahavir. And also it was, the official language of the Mauryan Empire, and some of the edicts of Ashoka were composed in it. Written in the Brahmi script, it was the sacred language of Buddhism. Yet Maghi officially ceased to be an independent language in India a long time ago. It was listed as a language in Bihar, but has since then been grouped generally under Hindi. Maghi is spoken in the area south of the Ganges and east of Son River, across 9 districts of Bihar, 8 districts of Jharkhand, and West Bengal's Malda district. There are around 20 million speakers of Maghi around the world. And I am from, Maghi is my mother tongue. My mother is actually here, so
Wow.
And this book is actually dedicated to her. It's and so when I was growing up, obviously I had no idea of Maghi literature because I did not come across any books of Maghi or written in Maghi or either translated from Maghi. So in June 2020, I'm basically a poet, so I wrote a poem about this experience, and it is the poem is here. Surprised to learn that there is no written poem in Maghi. I run here and there, then sit down to write a poem in Maghi. I listen to the people in the street talking in Maghi, paying attention to their sounds and tones in Maghi. They twitter like birds day and night in Maghi. Even their abuses sound sweet in Maghi. ठीक है is ठीक हको. अच्छा आ गया is अच्छा आ गया in Maghi. खाना खाए is खाना खेलू. चाय पिए is चाय पीलू in Maghi. I go around the town looking for books in Maghi. I return home without finding a written word in Maghi. At home, I hear my mother say her prayers in Maghi. Hamar beta ke buddhi dev Bhagwan, he wants to write a poem in Maghi. So that's the background, and this is how when this poem was published, I started getting these emails and messages that you have no idea there is so much written literature in Maghi, and that's what exactly I wanted to know more about Maghi. Maghi is a bit. Here we also have other Bihar primarily has 6 languages. I call them languages because they are much older than Hindi actually. And we have, recently we have had translations from other languages, for example, from Bhojpuri and from Mathli. Mathli, we have a translator here, Lalit Kumar, right here. And the Bhojpuri one, Gautam Chowk, he's supposed to be here, but he's done. But the Maghi one was a bit left out, and absolutely no translation from Maghi. So this background is very important for you to know. and I was in Madagascar, and I had no idea about Bihari literature. So it was complete darkness. So I started, finding out what are the great works of Bihari literature. And during the, and the book is also outside. You can find a copy of the book of Bihari literature. But during that process of editing that book, that I came across this novel, or you can say novella, because it's a very short book, and it's from the writer Jayannath. Nobody actually knows him. He's like forgotten, completely forgotten, and he comes from a district called Nawada, where also my batchmate Ajit is from. He's from the IES, and Nawada district is my neighboring district. I am from Nalanda. Alison has been to Nalanda University, and so Jayannath Pati was he was himself a Mukhtar, and he was a very learned person. He spoke many languages. He knew several languages actually. Much more. I mean, of course, he knew English, but also knew Persian and Sanskrit and Bangla and Latin. And yes, and he also set up school there. He was an active participant in the freedom movement. And this book came out in 1928, almost 100 years ago. And its story, that we will discuss later. But this is the background of Maghi. And this is the first actually book from Maghi, a novel you can say, or novella, which to be translated into English. So it's also a great event vis-a-vis other languages in Bihar, which have more dominating or more, more presence. For example, Mathili and Bhojpuri. But Maghi used to be, Maghi Prakrit, which broke into upgrunts, and these days I'm writing another book on Nalanda, and I discovered actually that the Abhransa poetry particularly has a huge contribution in the evolution of poetry in India, particularly the form of doha, the couplet, and the Siddha poets, from Nalanda. 84 Siddhas are listed, who were at Nalanda University, and they have made huge contributions through their writings. And Sarhapa, Sarhapa is considered to be actually the first poet of all these languages, including Mathili and Maghi and Bhojpuri and Hindi as well. Even the Hindi, those who they consider Sarhapa to be the first, because there's everything, all origin of all these languages, they find themselves there. So this book particularly is also important for another reason, because it's a book about a Mukhtar, ambitious Mukhtar, who wants to get the title of Rai Bahadur, a coveted title during British India, but his ambition is not the issue. What is the issue here in this novel is that he's ready to do anything to get the title, which probably you can relate even today, with ambitions here, in our contemporary world, how ambitious people become, that they are absolutely ready to do anything to have that power, that position, that title. So that's something which is something so eternal and so contemporary. And that's why I felt, first time I read this book, and I knew that I have to translate it, because it's something which strikes a chord even today.
The way I look at this book, it's like a time capsule. So I would really like to take us, on this ride back in time, as a time machine, getting on it and, taking us back. just want to understand what was it like when Jayannath Party would have written this book. What was the situation like? What was the circumstances like? What was the world like? And how would you compare it to say when you decided that okay, I'm going to translate this and bring it to life again?
So this is also, let us see this. This is also the first available novel in Maghi actually. So Jagannath Pati was a very courageous person, and he decided to write his books in Maghi because there was not anything being written in Maghi that time, and he was very inspired by those who were writing in Bangla, and his first, this is actually his second novel, but his first novel is called Sunita, which has been lost, and this obviously would have been very daunting task for him to write something in Maghi when nothing was being written, and but he was particularly encouraged by the review of his first book, which was very well received, and he was very
Sunita.
Yeah, Sunita, yeah. The manuscript of which has been lost, and it was particularly, I think, challenging for him to write something about the customs and the professions of his time. But if you read this book, it seems that it was written yesterday, because those positions are still there, like SDO, sub-divisional officer, and now you have also the court, and so it's about the court, about the collectoriate or the sub-collectoriate, and also a courtesan who plays a very important role in this book.
And coincidentally, it was published on the 1st of April. So I think we are just late by about 7 days. 7 days, I think 8 April.
Yeah, it's all because of Penguin. Because they have, I think they just cycle, a stock taking cycle, and by the end of March, 31st March, I think they just stop taking. So obviously the book cannot be out so quickly. And it's precisely that's why we did not launch it on 1st of April, but launching it on 8th.
Might not have such an audience.
Yeah.
No, I think everybody needs to be commended, the publisher, the author particularly, and I think we also need to celebrate this gentleman, Thank you so much, Abhay, for bringing this gem, to life, back to life, and also for bringing him, again into spotlight.
Yeah, I must thank my editor Madhushi here, and also Mili, because this book has taken almost 3 years to bring out. Because it's a very small book, so it's a kind of publisher's nightmare. How do you kind of publish a small book? So, but they put their trust into the book, and it would not have been possible without them.
Vandanaji, I want to come to you next, as an author and a translator. I just want to understand from your perspective, when something like this, when I speak of in a regional sort of a way, and I also talked about, regional being the new global, when something like this comes out, how does this influence the larger, cultural exchange, at the pan-India level, or more so at the global level also? If you could share some insights into that.
Yeah. So as you rightly said, anything that is regional, which is rooted, which is very indigenous, always has a pretty global appeal. That's because everywhere in the world, the indigenous cultures, when we go back in history, seem to somewhat resonate and connect. We might not talk about it right now, but like he's discovered the language story, the root story, everything has a resonance worldwide. So I think regional literature, I wouldn't want to call it regional literature also. I would say indigenous or it resonates with our times. How is that possible? Like It is a 100-year-old story, and yet all the good things and bad things that come with bureaucracy and our social timber are existent today also. So I feel that such literature needs to be translated, needs to reach a wider audience, and I think it will be appreciated.
I absolutely agree. In fact, now I want to come to you, Millie as the publisher, because we all are now cherishing that we finally have this book, in our hands in its physical form. I want to understand your side of it. What made you interested, in this? What got you hooked that okay, this is something that Penguin would like to take up, as this project, and what was the experience like?
Hi, congratulations again, Naveen. At Penguin, we've been doing translations for quite a few years. We have a very active program and it's been going on for 10 years or more. But I'm very happy that I think there's a general awareness now all around in languages, because in a country like India, where states probably are like urban countries and there is so much cultural richness, diversity, there are a lot of hidden gems, and I think that is what we all are discovering, and this is one of those. Um, it's amazing. I think these books and many more such books need to be translated. From the publisher's point of view, I think it is very important for us to bring stories from different parts of the country to a wider audience, and that is what Penguin does. So congratulations again on Bahadur. I'm very excited about it. This is a very slim book, like everyone mentioned, but it is a very contemporary story. I think everyone can relate. There's something in it for everyone. We try to price it very reasonably. The book is also fresh, so that it appeals to younger people as well. And we continue to publish much more in translation and from various Indian languages across the country.
I think we really need that, more of that. Suraj, I want to come to you because you also come from Nalanda and you also have a thread, that is common, with Abhay. And if you could take us through a little about your initial, reflections of this book and how do you perceive it in terms of its cinematic potential? Because I personally feel, as somebody who writes on cinema and culture very actively, I really see a great cinematic potential. But since you are a filmmaker and you also hail from the region, I would love to have your reflections on this.
So, with me, Maghi language is also like the similar as I said, like when I go to my village, I used to talk with my parents in Maghi language. But when I am in Delhi, I used to talk in the Hindi language. So, and I was totally not aware about the Maghi literature. When I met last time, and he has started discussing about that. He has published one book on Bihari literature. I said that Maghi, he said yes, Maghi. So I was very curious to, so he said, hold on, you will be very soon going to get my translation of the first, this Maghi novel. So I'm really thankful and congratulating you to, as you said, it is now. So, a few days back, actually I got this book, like 1 month back. So, but few days back when event was, quite close, so I started reading, and within 2.5 hours I completed all the 8 chapters. It was like, oh, so one chapter after another chapter. It is, I mean, it was so engrossing for me that I wanted to complete, as soon as possible. So when I started reading, so I found 4 characters, and all the 4 characters had their own importance, like Shyamlal, Nawab Sahab, then Nasiban, then C Sahab. These are the 4 characters. When started thinking about the filming point of view, so I found there is lots of potential in all these 4 characters. Like the from the new SDO service, coming to join to Bihar Sharif, and there is, before Bihar Sharif there is one Kyul station. So Sam Lal, went over there and he tried to, please him. And he said that when he met to Nawab Sahib, he said that, look, sir, we have, oh, one partisan, she is pure virgin, So, Nawab Sahib interest, he wanted to meet, that partisan as soon as. So, in fact, that partisan was, she was traveling in another compartment. So Nawab Sahib said, you bring her. So and he went to, please her, and so at the end, so drama, there is lots of dramatic potential is there. So finally Nawab Sahib went, and the story has started when he landed to, Bihar Sharif, and all the, dramatic thing. There is also one, another lab angle. So I found it's very much, the filming potential. So we can have a full-length feature film.
In fact, I would like you and Abhay, to touch a little more on that, maybe a little later. But I would love to have an opening remark, from you, as a journalist. I really actually must thank you also. I read that piece that you did on the novel, and since I hadn't got the book by then, so it was really a great introduction for me also. So from the journalistic point of view, and you yourself are an author and you have such a wonderful understanding of different aspects and nuances of literature, I want to see your initial, understandings of a translation like this, vis-a-vis, say, an original novel, written, say, in English or, say, in Hindi for that matter. How do you compare that?
Yeah, firstly, I'd like to start with congratulating you, Abhay. You've done a fantastic job. And thanks, Murtaza, for that introduction. So when I was reading his book, from the perspective of writing a small summary of it, which would be read by many people on the net or in the magazine. So what really, touched the chord was how simple life was then. And some of those things still are there, well, there are things that are contemporary, I agree with everyone, but they are very simplistic attitudes of people, simplistic ways of handling things. Those things are kind of lost now. Because there's so much of competition, everybody wants to go ahead, there's so much of awareness, you want things, that wasn't there in that erstwhile Bihar, or erstwhile any city of India for that matter. In the colonial time, I think we Indians were a bit reticent of any kind of change. We didn't know where we kind of fit in. We were trying our best to be somewhere, and that's why I think that Rai Bahadur Kitab, what it was called, or that title was so important. That look, guys, I'm there, I'm all right, I'm okay. I'm not somebody, from the trees. You just drop down. So I think that was more of an individuality that people were looking at, some kind of a placement they were looking at in the society. So the book is also a tongue-in-cheek of the social milieu. How things were shaping up. And what I feel very important is, I think you should also push it big time on social media, because unfortunately our younger generation doesn't read. You have to really push them to read. If they read their course books, you are more than grateful, And reading storybooks, they'll read something, okay, there was a Harry Potter time, and they'll read something about Percy Jackson, and then moving on to some kind of literature. They read in pockets. Our generation worldwide had a more, I would say open perspective to gathering knowledge, and libraries played a big role, books played a big role. So I think as a journalist, what I try to do is write a story. I will give a summary of it as best as I could in print or in the online, that, while you're frisking through, you might just say, okay, let me just read. So I think more and more stories should come out like this. As she said, of the indigenous, lands, there are so many rich pieces of work across India, across the globe, and now that through technology, globally we are also connected. It is very easy to reach out to people, and translations, yes, have fantastic future. So all the best in your endeavors. I think you should do more of these works, and I should like.
Thank you.
Abhay, I have been following your work from a very long time, and have really seen some, whether when you were in Madagascar, your work on Latin America with Anthem, and of course the book on Bihari literature. But if I asked you that, where would you put this one, in your body of work, what would your response to that be? Because I'm really keen on, because I know you are deeply touched, and I saw and I could sense that in the foreword also, that yes, you brought in your mother, you brought in your childhood, so there's something special about this one, I'm sure.
Truly, I mean, I had started, the first book I edited is called Capitals. It's a anthology on a global anthology on. There's a poem on every capital city on the planet. So that's how I started. I started with the whole world actually, and started global. And then slowly, after the second book I edited was 100 Great Indian Poems. And slowly, started moving to my roots, and that's how the book of Bihari literature happened.
Global to local.
Global to local. So this is like this is also sort of I thought it's my duty to do this work because nobody else I saw doing it. And that's why this book is so important for me, particularly for Maghi, so I'm doing a whole trilogy now on Bihar, where I come from, and the book of Bihari literature, this one, and my next book is called Nalanda, so which should which should come out next year sometime. I'm hoping that media would publish it in January.
Well, actually, pandemic was a testing time for all of us, and I've seen, a lot of people going through this turmoil, and yet I've seen also a resurgence in terms of reading habits. I understand that maybe it's not going to continue, in that sense, because pandemic allowed a lot of time, we could sit back and, enjoy some things that we could not do. And so reading really saw a great resurgence. But from your own understanding, how do you perceive this changing trends, in reading, probably literary habits? Because Aditi touched upon the fact that a lot of the younger people are not much into reading. Yet at the same time, we see that, it's not dying, it's pretty much alive and kicking, that really fills my heart with joy. But what is your view on this thought of the changing reading habits, so to say, in a post-pandemic sort of world that now we have entered?
See, serious literature anyway never had many readers, and serious literary books took years and years to get established. And Millie would vouch for that because she's a publisher and she would answer this question better. The thing is that pandemic did offer certain solutions to combat our loneliness, which was heaped upon us. It was forced upon us. So we resorted to, say, reading, or maybe television, maybe films. But what I see and what I perceived after watching people closely, and I'm not talking about young readers, I'm talking about people in general. As soon as it was like over, or the lockdowns are finished, it was as if people were escaping from cages and they were out in the world. They were in malls, they were in eating joints, and they were just out. They never wanted to stay back. Now that leaves very little time for a hobby or passion or whatever you want to call it, reading. So that never happened. And being a writer, and not a very popular kind of a writer, I know from my own experience that the novel that I wrote is still getting to people. I mean, it has been 4 years. It came out during the lockdown, actually. So it was in 2020 that it was published. And yet, I would find one solitary reader telling me, oh, I got hold of your book today. This is today, that is 24. We are 4 years apart from that period. So what I feel is that essentially it hasn't changed much, and whatever generation we belong to, reading habits have gone somewhere, I don't know where, but yes, but we are very few serious readers. It's true, she was talking about libraries. Libraries are failed projects. I never see anybody going to the library. School children just go and pick up a few books because they are recommended. Yeah, they're just asked to read them. Otherwise, I don't see much change in reading habits of people. What is gone is gone. But yes, things like maybe some literature. I'll say something. One more point I want to add, that maybe Bharatiya Bhasha, whatever what you're calling as earlier it was called as a dialect, is actually a bhasha. Magahi, Bhojpuri, they are seeing a resurgence through translations. Suddenly people want to get back to their roots in a different way. They want to connect to their literature, to their music, to the drama and everything. So what these translations help those people who are uprooted from their indigenous movings, and they want to go back and connect, and that gives them a sort of solace and happiness. So maybe, and another thing is the volume of the book. If you have a thick book, people will say, "Itni moti kitab likhti, who's going to read?" So it's like that. You could have kind of shortened it, or so this is what we. That's what I'm saying. So they might have a better future. But serious literature was like always slightly slow to catch on. It's still the same, maybe it's gone even backwards.
There's really some serious food for thoughts. I think we really need to answer it, in a constructive way by actually, getting back to our old habits, which are slowly, dying. But I really want to come to you also, Millie, that now that we have talked about, publishing, what really makes me very joyous is the fact that this is not just published, this has come out as a modern classic. So what does it take, from the publisher's point of view to be dubbed as a modern classic? If you could elaborate it, for the benefit of all of us.
For us, classic is something that, of course, was published some time back. So, like Abhay mentioned, this book was published almost 100 years ago. This is the first translation of the novel in English, and therefore it does qualify as a classic. More than that, also, I think for us, classics are timeless stories. They can be read anytime, and they have an audience. So I feel that this book also fits into that space, and I hope it will keep on selling and more people will read it.
Anything specific you are looking for, when you are looking for talking about classics, and when you are specifically deciding that okay, we want to put spotlight on this one, because I'm sure there's a lot out there, but you can't bring out all in one go. So what are those identifiers that allow you to make these calls?
Well, there's no formula, but this is the first, as we all know, this is the first novel written in Marathi, so it is special. It is a special book. It is the first novel in a particular language and still very readable. It's the first translation, and that is why we thought it will be a good fit for our classics list, and it is a modern classic therefore for us. We also have like black classics which were written years ago, and then we look at translations and works that were published years and centuries ago as well. But for this one, we felt that modern classics is a good segment. I just wanted to add a bit, on the reading habits.
Yeah, please do.
I think this is a hall full of people and readers and writers. So I'm quite happy. I know that for literary books and for translations also to some extent, I think these are not always blockbusters, and some of them take some time to reach readers or find audiences. But I think we have to keep on trying, because for serious writers also we found that sometimes there are breakout books, and it takes just that one book that opens out and brings in a huge or large audience, and also the backlist and earlier books by the same writer also pick up. So we've seen that happen for a lot of our writers. So there's still hope, and I think we all have to collectively fight for it. One thing that I do see in this generation, maybe it is in groups and in some areas, is book clubs. So now schools, I feel, are doing a good job, and we've seen a lot of growth in children's literature, in children's books, and not all of them, like also why, they graduate into reading other kinds of books also, and they are reading a lot. So So, and they also form their own book club. So I hope that generation will also pick up and also be in the kind of things when they grow up.
Aditi, since this is the first, maybe a very unique book of its kind, so how does your approach change, when it comes to this, say, which is the first of its kind? And if you could also, uh, touch a little, upon your research, while you were writing that piece, which was a great introduction, a great precursor, without giving away too much. I really got the essence very easily.
So yeah, so when I read this book, obviously because I don't know Maghali language, I only read it in English from what Abhay has written. It's so beautifully written, and again, as I said earlier, it's the erstwhile Bihar of 1920s, and it could have been any subdivision, any mufassil town of that time. Had it not been a Maghali book, and had it been a translation of a Bengali book, I think the impact would have been similar. You know what I mean? It is of a certain generation and this picture of a certain society. That kind of, a village life, an SDO coming in, a big thing, now how do we, go buttering Nawab Sahib and get a few ways out, how do I become the Rai Sahib? Today it might not be Rai Sahib, today it might be, getting some order somewhere, the name might have changed, but, the title might have changed, but, the approach might be similar. I hope I'm not offending anybody by objective, but, so those kind of under the table and this and that, that is human nature. We all look for shortcuts in life. Given a chance, why not? That kind of an attitude is there. But through that, how the relationships come out. And what I found really interesting in this book, maybe because again, you're talking of a certain time, a certain place, that's culture and that civilization. The woman here is not a victim. While she's being victimized, she comes from a lower strata of the society where you do not look at women with much of respect. But while, the people are literally the two gentlemen in her life are like predators, she knows where to put them in the right place, which I found was fantastic, which women empowerment people should read once. That I really like the way, so that also talks about the strength the women have. So that also gives you an angle into the society. So that, so I researched again and I saw very much that, because as Maghali has its roots into Magadhi language of the past and everything, so while it is not very popular, people have known about it, it's not completely lost. Some traces of that old civilization culture, that strength, that has remained within the people and the society. So that is what really, touched the chord, and I felt, let me try and do as best as I can.
It's still a spoken bhasha.
It's a bhasha.
Yeah,
It's a bhasha.
they just told us that when they go home, go back to their villages, they speak in that bhasha.
And Vandana, if you see, most of our religious texts or storylines have been through bhasha. It has always been in India through verbal communication. So I think that also has a very big strength when your language, your culture is preserved only through your mother tongue. And for you, it's absolutely mother tongue in the truest sense.
Also curiosity value.
Yes, yes.
Vidyapati poems of Maithili has become a bestseller.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Suraj, you talked about, of the impressions that the book had on you. I just want to make it a little more interesting here. If I were to ask you, say, if a film adaptation of this, is to come out, I won't burden him with that. That's his choice, because that I leave it to him or anybody. The book is out there now. There are it's open to the world now. But if there were a film adaptation on this one, do you have any casting ideas in mind? Just throw it in the universe. I would come to you also. I would take your inputs also, but I would first take his inputs.
So, for a filmmaker, making film on, literary works, always has been a great challenge, and making justice with the, right kind of, cast, big challenge. But yes, while I was reading this book, so, I was having, some of the characters, which has really very big impact on my mind. And I was, thinking that maybe, if like let's say Nawab Saab, who is going to be a, like next SDO, to Bihar, joined to Bihar state, as SDO. So maybe, like Pankaj Tripathi is the right guy. This is the best suitable actor, who can make justification to the character of Nawab Saab, and maybe, like Nasiban, because as he said, like this politician is very, like young or so powerful lady, so maybe, like Alia Bhatt can get her,
Yeah, I'm sure had we made it in the 80s, you would have said Rekha.
But at the present situation, like these are the two castes which is more suitable for the Nawab Saab and Nasiban.
But you haven't thought of Abhay as the fool.
So Samlal, yes, Samlal, like he is a little funny kind of guy, so we have to like figure out some.
Abhay, if we really aim a little, bigger now, let's think of a Hollywood adaptation, of this one. You have any names in your mind, if we were to have a full-scale Hollywood adaptation, of the good old colonial times?
I have no idea. I don't. I haven't watched.
Someone give it a try, at least get us guessing.
I think Manoj Bajpayee should come in somewhere.
I was suggesting that Manoj
yeah,
Bajpayee should be
very
Samlal,
Wow.
or Pankaj Tripathi, one of those two.
See, we are already doing the casting for you.
Pankaj Tripathi for Nawab Saab and Bajpayee for Samlal.
Wow. That could be something.
And Singh could be Ranveer,
Singh Saab is.
We can have that discussion later, but I think it's always interesting, to hear it from the author and to hear it from a filmmaker, because this is something very interesting. Like while you were writing this, while you were translating this, were you ever thinking of, it getting, adapted into, say, a film or a series? Was that idea, did that idea ever come to you, occur to you?
It's so like the whole book is so scenic in the sense that you can visualize everything. So I thought that the book has an excellent film quality.
As a reader, I could, yeah, but as a writer, you
Because
also
you can see everything, the train chugging
Yeah.
in, yeah.
Allow me to read this portion since we have discussed about Nasiban so much. The point that he was making, very little excerpt. When the train stopped at Mokama, Samlal got off and went into Nasiban's wagon and asked her to follow him. But Nasiban refused to accompany him, pointing out that it would bring on Haldar Singh's ire. Despite Samlal's many requests, she didn't go with him and he went back to the Nawab balloon. Nawab Sahab was desperately strolling back and forth in front of Nasiban's compartment. He sought to bribe her with a 10-rupee note via Samlal and even suggested intimidation. Somehow, Samlal managed to convince Nasiban and brought her along with him to the first-class compartment. Upon seeing Nasiban alive from her compartment and walked towards the first class, Nawab Sahib quickly got onto the train and pretended to read the newspaper while reclining on his berth. When Nasiban came, he put down the newspaper and wearing a solemn look on his face said, "Please have a seat, Baijan." He switched on the fan and chatted with her the whole journey. When the train was 2 or 3 stations from its final destination, he sent Nasiban back to her carriage. So this is a very serious,
Beautiful. It's very evocative.
And it's also like, you don't need a script, the script is there.
So I think now we can open it for the audience round. We have, I think, around 5-10 minutes. We can take a few questions, 2-3 questions, if that's okay with all of us. Yeah, so I would now ask each one of you, if you have any questions, any observations, now's the time.
I have an observation, not a question.
Please.
Specifically because
You can
Millie
put on the
was
mic.
saying there is such a scarcity of readership. I live in Gurgaon, and what I see is a fantastic turn of the way things are happening now. That there's so many people who are reading, every condominium in Gurgaon has a book club. And there's so many women who are reading. So this is something which is going to be the next thing, that many more books which are read, which are about women, which are written by women. And apart from that, also the fact that even our college alumni group has a book club. So every month they discuss a book. So you can imagine how big that is. So please don't fret about the fact that you don't have readers. You just have to be in the right place. That's all.
May I?
Beautiful. Please, sir, please.
Well, Abhay, thank you very much for sending this book to me. There is something which makes me very, very curious. I read it at one go. In fact, I read it twice. The title of the book, Fool Bahadur. Now, immediately my mind went to another consisting of 2,000 pages in 2 parts, and still being sold, and that is Cervantes's Don Quixote, Don Quixote. So I was thinking about the translations of Don Quixote in Indian languages. I have done a book on that, and when I was doing my research, I found that in some of the Indian languages, this word Bahadur has been used. In 1925, in Marathi, then also earlier in the last century, in Urdu. Now, these are the languages which Jainath Patil knew very well. This is what comes out. I also tried to go into some archival material, didn't find, and I'm still at it, and I will go into it. But I found that this translation of Don Quixote into Indian languages, but they were very small translations, particularly meant for school children, so that they could read and be happy to see the episodes and enjoy them, etc., etc. And one of the translations was in Marathi. It was Kyan Bahadur. And then in Urdu language, also Azad, he published in an Urdu weekly a similar character whose name was again Azad, and he would go from place to place and show this same kind of curiosity as well as his astuteness in order to benefit from different situations. Now this he did in the last century. Now when he wrote, Jainath Patil wrote, this was in I think 1928, 28 or 29. Now in 25 there are 3-4 versions in Urdu and Marathi, in Bengali. They are coming out, small versions like yours, which will make young people, school children enjoy. Changing the whole, language, turning it in their own version, which could be enjoyable, and enjoyed by school children. Now, I was wondering, and this is my curiosity, I will work on it, I'm sure, whether Jainath Patil used this terminology, Fool Bahadur, as a result of this particular word being used to denote Don Quixote from the Cervantes, writing, whether it had some influence on him. This is my curiosity, and I'm going to work on it. I've looked at some material, but I haven't found any, but I may go into it, but I thought you might.
I would say that why to translate Fool Bahadur into Spanish and see if there was complete the circle, and there is whatever happens in this world, influences us in a way, in greater way or in a lesser way. But we have Ambassador of Chile here, and and also from the several professors from the Department of German and Romance Languages at Delhi University, and also Ambassador Katua, who has been ambassador to Spanish.
No, I'll help in movie making. Already I've helped Suraj to make Thinking of Film.
So it's a very short book, and I think I would welcome his Spanish translation.
One point.
That's a good enough.
Please, please.
Suraj, please get in touch with me. Like Thinking of Him,
Yes.
I've helped about 11 producers to make movies or books which are not so popular. Thinking of Him is my collaboration with
Yes.
him.
Of course.
No,
So many
getting the
questions.
rhyme
Okay.
and all that kind of thing.
Oh, so casting, see, we have a great casting director,
Please discuss
Ambassador
it.
Katua.
It's a good script. What he has done is tremendous.
I was involved in this.
And already most of them are like dialogues in his book.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you have ready-made material. Yes.
My question is to Abhay and as well as Vandana ji. I think both of you or one of you called Maghi as Bhasha or something. So there is Maithili and there is Bhojpuri in Bihar, and there's a lot of body of work in both the languages. I think Maghi also, as you said, very rare, but it is there. So will it be appropriate to call it Bhasha or do we call it Boli? Because there are Boliyan hai. So what will be more appropriate?
So, see, I have written, I think, about 30 pages of introduction to this book about Maghi and the origin of Maghi. And and the great literary works in Maghi, which have been published. But see, Maghi, Maithili, and Bhojpuri, they all, and including Bangla and Odia and Assamese, they all come from one source, and that is Magadhi Prakrit. And the evolution of languages in India has happened that way, that you have these, Maghi comes from that source. That's what I was referring to Sarapa and all these Siddha poets from Nalanda. So Magadhi actually, it's much, Magadhi from which Maghi comes is much older. And and pure Maghi is actually, it's completely distinct from Hindi. There is lots of now mixing up because in the same family, for example, my father spoke in Hindi and my mother spoke in Maghi. So now there is a mixing up. But if you have pure Maghi, then it's very difficult for someone to. And Maghi also had its own script, Kathi script, which was used for legal documents, and I think some work has also been written in Kathi script, but now mostly Devanagari script is used. But actually, this book has the history of Maghi literature and also history of Magadh, a bit of history of Magadh.
Would you like to add something?
Just that even Bhojpuri was written in Kathi script, so there was a different script called Kathi. And why he's also stressing on the fact that it be called a bhasha, and even I refer to it as bhasha, because the entire, like he said, the evolution of languages, like we say Bengali is a bhasha, Odia is a bhasha. So now the fight is to kind of give them the rightful place. Earlier it was not considered, it was considered a dialect or a boli. But now Avdi is also a bhasha. So these indigenous languages, they need to be given more respect. This is what he says in his foreword. So we need to consider it that way.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
I think we have time for one more question.
I would like to ask about your next oh, sorry. Okay. I would like to ask a question about your next project, Nalanda, perhaps you say. So is it about the history of Nalanda University or historical events that happened around Nalanda? Because there's a lot of controversy about how it perished and different versions of it.
So Nalanda story is completely fascinating story, Nalanda, it's not only a book about the university actually, but it's also about the origin of Nalanda, like how did Nalanda became such an important center of learning, and it also brings something which we do not know much about is the rise of Magad, as an empire, because during the time of there were 16 Mahajanpadas in India, the 16 great Janpadas we call them, cities, city-states, yes. But why did only Magad become an empire and not others? So and the center of learning like Nalanda. I mean, there were several Buddhist universities in India. The time Nalanda was at its peak, when the Chinese pilgrim Xuanzang traveled to Nalanda, there was another famous monastery called Ballavi. But he decided not to go to Ballavi, he came to Nalanda. So what was the reason? So I analyzed in this book, recently the remains of two of Buddha's principal disciples. Everybody knows about Buddha, but Buddha was more like the founder. But who were the people who made Buddhism? Who made into a kind of an established religion. And two of his disciples, Sariputra and Moggallana, they recently, there was a huge procession in Thailand actually, when their remains were taken. And both actually Sariputra and Moggallana are from Nalanda, so you have Buddha, and then you have the chief two disciples of Buddha, and also the two chief female disciples, Khema was one of them, who was King Bimbisar's one of the consorts of King Bimbisar. So it's a very fascinating story how Nalanda. It's also about what Amartya Sen calls argumentative Indian. And this tradition of Shastars. I don't know what's the best English translation of Shastars. Like scholarly debates or discussions, but India has been a center for Shastars, like you kind of challenge another scholar, I mean, I think the same tradition was in Greece. You discuss with one philosopher, discuss with another philosopher, and then you come to some conclusion, and somebody wins and somebody loses in the debate, what we call modern debates. So India has been, and Nalanda particularly, has been a center of such a scholarly discussion many centuries before the university was founded there. So this book, Nalanda is, I haven't come across any book which kind of systematically tells you this story of Nalanda. This side, that how did Nalanda become such an important center of learning? What were the roots of rise of Nalanda, and what was life in Nalanda like? What was an average day in Nalanda like?
Are you thinking of a plot and a story?
No, it's not a plot. It's a book of history.
It's only history.
Life of Nalanda.
Yeah, but whatever sources are available, and then particularly Nalanda's contributions are immense in the field of philosophy and poetry and actually art. So astronomy, architecture, logic. So these contributions, and then what is most people I mean, most of us only know about Nalanda was burnt down and one day. So that the mystery of decline of Nalanda, how did it decline? It's not a simple straight answer. That one day it was destroyed. It does not happen like that. And it's also a very interesting story of how Nalanda declined and how Buddhism declined in India. I mean, because the decline of Nalanda is not just the decline of a university; it's actually decline of an empire. It's decline of a religion. And the continuation of Nalanda. Many Nalandas. There were Nalandas. I mean, today you will be surprised how many Nalandas are there across the world. I mean, when you will read the book. So I won't reveal more than that.
Do we have any more questions? All right. So, it's time to wrap up, and I would like to thank all my panelists. I would like to once again congratulate Abhay, Penguin, and I would like to thank you for making this session such a riveting and engaging session. Thank you so much.
Special thanks to Surajji for his launching this event. Can we have one more photo? And all of you, thank you.